Welcome back, guys. So in this lecture we're going to continue our game development where we already had the true or the correct, if it is true or a false, and the game over displayed onto the bottom when we clicked one of the options. Now it's time to show us some kind of a message which is more user friendly and probably avoids us from clicking any of these buttons again, and make sure the user clicks the play again button. So we're going to code all of that in this lecture. So the first thing that we're going to do is let's make sure that we have a div on top of this so that it gets displayed when the user is done with clicking, and of course it goes away when the user is playing the new game. So the way we can do it is I've already created a CSS class for it, and I think the name of that is the CSS after. So all we need to do is create a div with the class after. So let's do that. Let's remove this. We don't need this anymore. Actually, let's keep it before we do everything else. So let's say div class name is equals to, we're going to add the class name as after, and let's just go and put this as an empty div, and let's just say hit the button below to play again. That's all we're going to say in that div. Let's see what happens, and you can see there's a very small data coming in. Let's try to make this big by putting an h3 tag so we can at least see some text. And of course the reason it's not showing any color because it's not yet any the color is not even present. So if I add something called as a correct, because I have a CSS class for correct, if you see here, and it says the background is green, so you can see hit the button below to play. So that's how it will appear. Now I can also go ahead and say if this is wrong, and it should get the red color, and you get the point, right? So depending on if the answer is correct or wrong, we will change the color or the status of that div, which is green or a red. Now that can be dynamically done. We'll get onto it for a minute. Let's try to make sure that this message is also corrected. So let's say we move this to a this.render message, because we need to display a different message when the user has already completed successfully, and we need to display a different message when the user wins versus a user ends. So let's say render message, and out here let's do if this.state.correct. Then I need to render, let's say return something and say good job. And if it is not correct, then say else, return, say hit the button again. Okay, so that's the message that will get rendered. So now I'm doing an error, so it shows me an error because it's false at this point. Now let's make sure we do this dynamically. So the way we can do this dynamically, which is the CSS class showing and hiding things, is very easy. So there is something called as a class names library in NPM. And if you have already remembered the NPM that we discussed at the beginning, where we installed NPM for various packages, this is where we can use NPM. You can just go and find something called as a class names. Now once you find class names, you can just go and see npm install. Now before when we install, let's see how it is used. So the way you can use it is you can put it or import it as a class names. Once you do that, you can have class names which is of the format foo bar comma separated names, and it will append them to the class name, which is something similar to object.toAssign, if that's what the correct method I recollect. Now once you have this, you can also have conditions, which means display foo or add the class name foo if something is true, add the class name bar if something is true. So we can use this logic and try to code our before and after logic, which means either hide the div or show the div. So let's quickly try to install this. So let's get the console. Let's first turn the server down. Let's do npm install class names. So npm install class names. and it gets installed. But again, if you import this project somewhere else and someone does an npm install before they start the project, it will not work. So the way you do that is you say npm install class names and then you do save, which means it will try to store this and it will update the package.json. So I've opened the package.json already, and once, of course, because it's already installed, it will not install it, but it will update the package.json file so that the class name gets registered. You see, class names got added. So anyone who just takes away this code base, like if you upload it to GitHub or somewhere, and then they do an npm install onto this project, and everything which is a dependency will get installed. Easy, right? Now, that being said, let's do an npm start again so that our server comes back up, and the server is back up. Let's go back to our quiz.js and try to use the class names. So the way we can use it is, we can do something similar, which is import class names from, and instead of just like React, we will say class names. Let's save it. Nothing should happen. The screen should refresh. And now comes the real thing, where we will go down to our class name, which is out here. And instead of this, what we will say is class names, pass in the parameters, which is, let's say, after, and instead of wrong, let's just remove this. Let's give it a comma, add the same conditional logic that we just saw here, which is display something when it is true. So let's go back to our app and let's say this, and what we need to display is wrong when this dot state dot correct is false. Okay, and similarly we need to display correct, which is correct when it is true. So this dot state dot correct is true. Let's save it. It should refresh and it should give you an exception. Unterminated string constant. I think that, oh, I did not put a quote here. Okay. And it should refresh the screen and everything should work. Let me close this. We don't need this anymore. So for now it's just wrong because by default the correct is false. So you need to make sure that this is hidden at the start. Let's say we add the class hide, which will hide the class. Let's just add a small CSS class called hide. So let's do a hide and let's say display is none. Let's save it. Let's go here. Let's say hide. Let's save it here as well. So to start with, it should say display none. Let's refresh. I think it's still compiling. No, it's not. So let's make sure if it's not compiling, let's add some importance to it. Important. Now it should vanish. Fantastic. So all we did was we added the class names, we added the hide, and we added wrong or a true when this happens. But again, hide should not come all the time. Hide class should only come when the game is over or probably not over. So let's say hide should come when this dot state dot game over is false. So to start with, it will always be hidden. You see that? Easy, right? Now that it is hidden, let's click something and it should appear. And it appears. So it is false. When I do play again, it doesn't go away yet. So you need to make sure whenever there is a play again, you add a logic to it. So let's add an on click to it. So let's say on click equals to this dot play. Now when you do this dot play, let's go and create that play. Let's create it here. And here you do this dot set state. First of all, you revert everything back to the ground zero, which is correct as false. and game over also as false. And let me save that, and that's called this dot play game, so that a new game is presented. Let's save this, and it comes up. Let's try to click it. Nothing happens. Let's see what the problem is in the console. I think I'm doing a set state within the call, because this should not be a call. Let me go here, update it as this dot play. Okay, let's try to click the play button, and it doesn't work because we have not yet binded the play button. So the way we can do it is this dot play is equal to this dot play dot bind this. Let's save it. The page should refresh, and let's try to click an answer. 58, it's false. Play again. But you see the data is not yet getting updated, which we will fix shortly. But this definitely should work. At least your play and hide is working, which means your new game is getting started. So the way we can fix it is, every time you do a play, which means out here you update the state and you call play game. When you go to the play game method, in the play game method you do everything and just you return the riddle, but you never reset the riddle. So if the game is over, you need to make sure you update the riddle as well as the state. So the way you can do it is, whenever you click this method play game, you go and call the play game method. Now in the play game method, all you're doing is returning a riddle, but you're not updating the state of the riddle. So in that case, the way you can do it is, if this dot state, which means it's an existing game, and this dot state dot, because you've already updated the state, game over is true. Let's just give that. And if it is true, what you do is you say this dot set state, and in here you update the riddle. Riddle is riddle. Else you just return the riddle. Let's save this. Let's try to see what happens. Let's try and click an answer. It's false. Click again. The answers changed. 3240. Click again. 2828. Answers changed. Click again. Click again. So the numbers get updated now, and also the content. So that was very easy, isn't it? Now there is one thing missing, which is animations. And we will cover animations in the next lecture, and I will also summarize everything that we have done in the next lecture. So I'll see you in the next class.